So I got a call from my agent that the comedian Tommy Davidson was filling in as a host on The Late Show, and they needed 2 black males wearing Speedos to feed Chinese food to the great Pam Grier. The great iconic 70s action shero from movies like Foxy Brown to Jackie Brown. And, I went, like I said, my agent called and I went over to, I think it was where Nickelodeon was shooting at the time on Sunset. And I went over there and I had no idea what we would be doing. They didn't tell us, you're gonna be feeding Chinese food. We didn't find that out until we got there. And at the last minute, they said, okay, you're in your Speedos. And we walked out on stage and we got this Chinese food. And next thing you know, I'm like, man, that's Pam Grier. Because like I said, we didn't know. And so it was awkward. I didn't know what to do. It's like, do I walk around a right side or a left side? It was insane, right? It was a prank that Tommy, I guess because he knew Pam from years back, Tommy wanted to play this prank on Pam. And boy, it sure worked. And I laughed all the way home. See, some of the stuff that they show you on television, they don't show everything on television. That kind of happens behind the scenes, so to speak. So that was really, really a trip. I'll just leave it at that. Regina Hall. Now, we all know Regina Hall from her many great movies, including Scary Movie and the Best Man series. But something you probably do not know is that I actually did a scene with her long before she probably even met Harold Perrineau. In 1990, at the early start of my acting career, I took this workshop, this acting workshop, and it was like a casting director acting workshop. And it was in North Hollywood, and Regina was assigned to me to be my scene partner. We were to do a comedy scene. And of course, back then, I had no idea who she was. And for the most part, in the business only, business-wide, only the Wayans brothers knew who she was because they used to use her in some of their earlier projects. And so we went out into the hallway to practice. And I was very, very green. I had no clue what I was doing. And we did a few takes in the hallway. And she was like, look, she said, you too slow. She said, this ain't drama, this is comedy. I mean, I work with the Wayans brothers. She just let me have it. She said, this ain't new to me, so you gotta pick it up, right? She was like snapping her fingers and stuff. And I was looking at her for a second, I was like, man, who is this little thing she's talking to, right? And so, like I said, she was like, hurry up and being all commanding and stuff. But she was totally on a different level. We went in the room to do our scene in front of the casting director. Man, I bombed. I did not do well. And I packed my little bags and went on back home. And I didn't realize, one day I'm at the movies with my family and I'm looking at her. It was one of them Best Man movies. And I'm looking at her on screen and I'm like, man, I recognize her from way back. Couldn't put my finger on it. And I did a little research and sure enough, it was Regina Hall. And so I didn't realize who she was till I'm sitting there 30 years later, I think it was. Now this was really a trip. I ended up going to court with this actress that took my Hey, I Saw Your Commercial program. Her name is Sharnetta Petty. She actually took me to court, and boy was she petty. She accused me of being a black racist. So she actually filed a lawsuit, right? And it was public information in the court system. And so that's when those court shows get a chance to see what cases are on the docket, if I'm saying that right. And we ended up going on Judge Joe Brown. And at the time I had a satisfaction guarantee, but it was based on 4 weeks. She only took 2 classes. I mean, she'd sit in a chair and just, you know, be looking all mean. And I'm like, wow, man, why is this young lady throwing shade my way, looking at me like that? But she would just, you know, just sitting in her chair, because I guess I was saying some things to her, all related to casting, right, and acting. But, you know, I guess she said, oh, he's a racist, he doesn't like black people, and this kind of thing. So that was her case against me. And according to Judge Joe Brown, the basis of her case was complete foolishness, and her arguments had no merit.
Completely unrealistic. The case is denied. Grow up.
This court is in recess. Folks, I'll have you step out the door to the right, please.
And I won my case, got a couple of $100, and I got a t-shirt to go with it. Yay, right? We won our case, right? So that was a trip. And what was so funny is several actors were watching the episode, and then we had it in reruns. Several actors were watching the show, and I ended up getting actors to take my course from that TV episode of Judge Joe Brown. So it became an even sweeter deal for me that she, you know, it's kind of a blessing in disguise that she just didn't like me and took me to court, and I won. All right, so it's 1986 and Carson, California. I used to love renting movies. I mean, I'd rent anything with Bruce Willis, Steven Seagal, Stallone, Schwarzenegger, you name it, I rented it. And so I went to the video store at Avalon and Victoria Boulevards. And I went inside to return a movie, and then I was gonna rent another one. And a few steps into the store, I heard someone say, well, the manager of the store, he said, call the police, just call the police. I'm like, what is he talking about? And then all of a sudden, you know, I took a few more steps inside the store, and all of a sudden, someone just comes up from behind me and sticks a, you know, what turned out to be a gun in my back. And so I'm like, whoa. And he said, man, it was a little, you know, I couldn't see him because he was in back of me, but it turned out to be this little short dude, and he had the gun in my back, and he was like, just do what I say, do what I say. I won't hurt you if you just do what I say, right? So I'm like, wow. And it was all happening so fast, I couldn't really be scared. So I just did what he said. And so he's pressing a gun in my back, and he's saying, just go to the back, go to the back. So I went to the back, and the store owner also had been told earlier, you know, to stay behind the counter, stay, and just shut your mouth, right? And so, you know, I'm feeling like I'm in some kind of Denzel movie or something, one of them Equalizer movies. And so he pushed us toward the back. It was because it was a customer in there too. And so he locked us up in like a storage closet. And he was like, no, don't come out of there. And so the little thief, he raided the cash register, and was just, we heard him out there like ransacking stuff looking for money. And then finally those noises stopped, and then he was gone. And then I waited, because the store owner was like, oh, we got to get out of here. Just call the police. I said, man, just listen. Just be quiet, right? Let's give it a moment. So about 5 minutes went by, and I peeked out, and then he was gone. And, you know, it was really something. I didn't feel like I was gonna die that day. So I believe that's why I stayed calm. I just didn't feel like I'm only gonna live, what was I, like maybe 23 or something there. I just didn't feel like it was my time to go yet. Felt like the Lord was with me. And I found out through, I think, the Daily Breeze newspaper in Carson that they caught the guy No, it was on the news also. They caught the guy 2 weeks later. He was down the street at Henry's Market robbing them. And they finally caught the guy and put him away. But that was a trip also, because I'd never been caught up in something like that before, and it just all happened so fast. Okay, it's 1997-ish when I worked at the Hollywood Athletic Club. And on Tuesday nights, Roland Wirt and Reggie Dorsey, they used to do, like they'd host Black Hollywood. It was like anyone from Black Hollywood would come, from well, Prince to Whitney Houston, Queen Latifah, Tupac. I mean, all kinds of folks would come to this Tuesday night. I think we do it one Tuesday night a month. And we just have a wonderful time. And at the time, Chris Tucker was only known in smaller circles in Hollywood. He wasn't like this big world famous actor that he is now. And one night he came to the event, and the host, the female host at the bottom of the staircase, because all the party and reindeer fun was upstairs. So you had to enter through the staircase at the bottom, right? And that's where the female host was. And she wouldn't let Chris in because, I mean, who knew him, right? But again, like I say, smaller circles in Hollywood, she didn't know who he was, and he wasn't dressed right. You know, there was a dress code. So she wouldn't let him in, so he starts like ragging on her and calling her names and, oh man, I ought to run some train tracks on your teeth, on your braces. I mean, he's just ragging on her. And so they called me, they said, hey Mike, we got some trouble at the bottom of the staircase for the party upstairs. And so I walked over and I approached him. And I said, man, you have to stop, man. You got to leave her alone. And he was like, oh man, I ain't saying nothing to her. I'm just, right? And I said, okay. So I just kind of went over in the cut, and he's still bothering her. He just keeps hurling insults at her. He just keeps saying all kinds of nasty stuff to her. And then I had it. I walked up on him. I said, listen, man, you got to go. You got to leave, right? I mean, he's like real skinny, right? And he had on like a white tank top shirt and some beat up jeans. And so I said, it's this way. You got to go out this way. So we're walking out, and he's like mumbling something under his breath, like cursing. And then all of a sudden, we walk into the entry room, and he just pulls a pool cue off the rack, and he breaks it in half. And he says, come on, MF. You know, he starts cursing at me. I'm gonna stab you with these MF and sticks. You punk AS security guard and all this kind of stuff. And he's like swinging his sticks at me like in Rush Hour, right? And he's swinging his sticks at me. And he's like, come on. He's like serious. And then it got real quiet, and people are gathering around, and it's like really a trip. And I had a photo shoot to do the next day that I really felt like I put in the work to get that shoot. And I'm like, man, ain't no way I'm showing up on set tomorrow, my face all scratched up and this kind of thing. And so finally, you know, I got him to calm down. My manager, actually, Robert, he actually walked up and he's like, what's going on here? What's going on here? And then I told him what happened. And then he said, I'll take it from here, Mike. And he calmed Chris down and walked him on outside. And he said, just come back next time. I'll make sure you're upstairs. And he calmed him down. So then I went back to my post, which was outside. I was doing the door. And he got in his car and drove by on Sunset. And he was like, punk. He was screaming out of his car. He's driving his car, and he's got his head out of the car, and he's screaming, you punk, you know, cursing at me, security guard, MF, and all these names, right? Just screaming at me, going down the street. And I'm like, wow, what a trip. And then, you know, next thing I know, a few years later, because he had kept saying, man, I don't need to get in y'all MF party because he said, in a year from now, I'm gonna buy this building. That's what he was saying. And you know, I don't know if he ever made enough to buy that building, but we all know the story of Chris Tucker. And that was one of my episodes with that young man at the time. Now, while most of you were introduced to this world famous recording artist and movie star through her music videos and movies, I believe I was actually one of the first people to interview her. One of my actual first hosting gigs was a celebrity basketball game for AIDS Project LA. It was 1992, and I was to interview the celebrity cheerleaders. And I interviewed a very, very young Jennifer Lopez.
Hi, I'm with the celebrity cheerleaders. Your name is?
DeMonica Santiago.
Jennifer Lopez. Lisa Thompson.
All right. I'd just like to ask you, what's the best advice that you can give to teens and dating and AIDS in the 90s?
And she had previously been cast as one of the Fly Girl dancers on In Living Color. And of course, she's gone on to be a big star now. But I believe I was the second person besides, Keenan, to actually introduce her to a big audience of sorts with this hosting gig that I was fortunate enough to get.
Hi, I'm with the celebrity cheerleaders. Your name is?
DeMonica Santiago.
Jennifer Lopez. Lisa.
And yeah, it was great. And again, we all know the great things that J-Lo has gone on to do. All right, I got a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to meet with the GOAT of all GOATs, the great one, Mr. Muhammad Ali. It was 2002, and his daughter, Miriam, they called her May May, she liked for you to call her May May, had taken my commercial course. Hey, I saw your commercial. And she told me that she ran an after-school program for at-risk youth children, and she wanted to invite me to come in and speak because she knew that I'd written a book and I'm a life coach as well. And she said, I want you to come speak. And so we set up the day, and I went in, and it was right over in South Central off Vermont. And I went in, and these kids were screaming and yelling, and I heard some of them cursing and all that. And she yelled at them. She said, y'all settle down. You don't dare disrespect when I bring a guest, right? And so there was like, quiet then. And then I was able to command and keep their attention, because at first they were like really rambunctious, but all of that faded out when I started speaking. And she was so pleased with my talk. In the end, she said, oh, I'm so glad you came. Oh, this was so great, Coach Mike. She said, my dad comes to town sometimes to do his philanthropic work. And she said, I'll let you meet him. And I just got nervous. I was like, okay. Because when I was a kid, man, Muhammad Ali was everything to us. Who didn't want to float like a butterfly and sting like a bee? And so I was just terrified thinking about it, that, I'd get to meet him, not in a book signing, right, but actually one-on-one with him. And so, I had to shake that off, and I said, okay, oh yes, oh, I'd love that. That would be the highlight of my life. And so on a Saturday, it was one particular Saturday, I didn't have any classes on Saturday, and sure enough, she called me and she said, oh, Coach Mike, my dad's in town. He's at the Wilshire Beverly Hotel, and he's in town. She said, you can meet him if you want to. And I said, oh, absolutely, I'd love to, because I had a free afternoon. So I rushed over to the, I said, I want to document this. I rushed over to the liquor store, and I got a little camera, this disposable camera, because our phones didn't have cameras then. So I went in, I actually bought 2 cameras, and I got the cameras. I'm like, Lord, I hope these cameras aren't defective. So I went on over to the hotel, and I said, yeah, oh, no, she met me downstairs, and then she took me up, and I'm like nervous. Walked inside his room, and she said, Daddy, because he had fallen asleep. And so she said, Daddy, she said, my coach is here. And he got up slow. He walked out of that room and I saw him and I'm like, oh, right? I'm like about to pass out because it's like, it's really him. And so he's walking out slow, approaching me. And he said, who's in my house, in my apartment or something? He said, I could barely understand him because he was, experiencing more of the Parkinson's at that time. And he said, who's in my room? Yeah. And he said, you put him up, right? And then he smiled, and I was still about to freak out. But then I remembered somebody taught me years ago, I think it was 1985, they taught me treat stars like normal people and treat normal people like stars. And that just hit me. And I was like, wow. And I just calmed down, and, we took those, the pictures of, like the fist thing and the fist pictures he takes with, I think Stallone and Will Smith. He likes to do this fist to chin thing. And it was just great. It was really an awesome experience. He likes to do magic. So he had like an orange hanky or something, and then he does this magic trick. And then he says, stand over there. And I said, I'm sorry, what? And he says, stand over there. So he said, stand over there. And so I stood over across from him, and then you have to stand at an angle, and then he makes it look like he's levitating off the ground. He does this thing with one foot, like where you can't see one of his legs. And it looks like from an angle that he's floating off the ground. And it was great. That was a once in a lifetime experience, and I'll never forget it. And I'm so glad that camera worked so I could document the experience. Okay, so I saved the best for last. Episode 17. I'm gonna introduce you and share with you the woman that saved my life.